How to take pictures in the Performing Arts Center, Part 1. Notice, this lesson is based on the Performing Arts Center at my high school. The conditions at your school may be different, in particular the lighting. Gear. Camera setups. We have two examples here. First, using fast zooms. The camera, Canon T8i, selected for the high ISO capability. Lenses, Sigma 17 to 50 f2.8. That's for your wide shots, full width of the stage. Longer, tighter shots, Sigma 70 to 200 f2.8. You're going to use that on a monopod because of the weight of the lens. Second option. This is when you don't have those two f2.8 zoom lenses. Camera, Nikon D5600. Again, it's a high ISO capable camera. Lenses, 18 to 140 kit lens. It's not a fast lens like 2.8, but it's what you have. You use that for the full width stage shots. Long lens, it's a 70 to 200 f4 on a monopod. I used both of these lenses when I shot in our theater. So these two lenses can and did work. Exposure, meter mode, center weight or spot. You want the meter to ignore the background. We'll have examples later. Exposure mode, aperture priority. Set the aperture to wide open for the maximum light. Check your shots often for correct exposure, and use exposure compensation as needed. Shutter speed. With a short lens, it should not go below 1/125th of a second, and with a longer lens, should not go below 1/250th of a second. Some of you may be saying, but I have an image stabilized lens. Can't I go slower? Problem is, a stabilized lens or camera will stabilize your movement, not the subject's. Subject can still move and create blur. So you still have to follow this rule to have a decent shutter speed for the subjects. ISO, auto ISO, or manual. If manual, set it as high as you need to keep the shutter speed at the minimum as stated above. Screen display. I use histogram for basic exposure, but once I've got that, I switch to the blinking highlights. This is to see what is burnt out. Do not burn out the faces. If that happens, the face is just going to be a white splotch, and you really don't want to have that happen. Exposure. As soon as you arrive, get in and do test shots and set the exposure. However, the caution is the lighting may change once the performance starts. Check your exposure early, periodically, and whenever the light changes. Again, do not blow out the faces. Look at the blinking highlights display. You may have to adjust the exposure to compensate for the color of the clothes. For instance, white shirts or a black outfit with a black piano. That could affect your exposure with the meter. Consider shooting in manual exposure mode. This eliminates the background and clothing from affecting the meter and exposure. But you need to be aware of lighting differences across the stage and adjust the exposure accordingly. Again, watch the shutter speed. IS will only compensate for your camera movement, not subject movement. So do not go below 1/125th of a second. The 70 to 200 2.8 lens will give you more light than the 18 to 135 kit lens, but you'll probably need a monopod to support the 70 to 200 lens. The weight of it will be hard on your arm for anything longer than a few minutes. Keep the shutter speed above 1/250th of a second. Other. Consider shooting in RAW. RAW gives you more options to correct for exposure errors than shooting in JPEG. But the RAW to JPEG workflow is more complicated and time-consuming than JPEG. I might shoot things in RAW, but when I'm shooting for the school, I'm shooting in JPEG simply because of the volume of pictures I'm dealing with. It's a trade-off. Other logistics. Bring a small flashlight so that you can look at your camera and controls in the dark. Also, get a red bike light with a constant on light, not the blinking one. You want the constant on. You'll put that on your bag so you can see where your bag is in the dark. That is so you or others don't accidentally step on your bag. And depending on where you store your bag, you may not be able to see your bag in the dark. Planning. Plan the shot. Go to the rehearsal if they have one. You want to see what shots you can get from what locations in the theater and what angles. If it's a dress rehearsal, the good thing is you don't have an audience to worry about as you move around the theater. If it's not a full dress rehearsal, the lighting at the rehearsal may not match that at the event, so the lighting may not be accurate. Plan where to be for what shots. You got this from the rehearsal. Work as a team. If more than one of you are shooting the event, coordinate where each of you will be and what you will cover. Don't shoot as twins right next to each other. Spread out and get different angles. Get a copy of the program so you know what's going on. Discuss the program with somebody on the program staff. You want to find out if there's anything special that you should watch out for, like a special guest conductor or performer. And make a gear checklist so you don't forget anything. Event shots. This is an example. Beginning, introduction speeches, the entire group or orchestra, so you're getting the whole stage. Tight shots are individuals or groups, for instance, on the orchestras, violins, brass, cello, etc. What you're doing this for is it's better to go in and take your tight shots and try to crop out these groups from a larger image, because you will be using high ISO, and a deep crop will end up with a lot of noise. So go in there tight with the lens and get a tight crop with the camera, not on the computer. At the end, you have presentation of flowers to the conductors. Respect the audience. Shutter noise. The shutter noise can be distracting to the audience, especially when it's a quiet performance. Shoot 1 or 2 shots at a time, then stop. Do not shoot in burst mode. This is not what the audience wants to hear. That is going to be upsetting to many audience people. This is where a mirrorless camera with an electronic silent shutter has an advantage. Dress in dark clothes so you do not stand out as you walk along the side of the theater. Walk slowly and quietly. When you shoot in the middle, get down. You do not want to block the view of the audience behind you. This is why you try and shoot at dress rehearsals if possible. There is no audience to get in the way of. Get a seating plan of the theater. This is the seating plan of my theater. The circles in red are where I plan to stand. The primary place I shoot from is that red oval at the bottom of the picture. It is at the back of the theater, so there's no one behind me. I can walk left and right for a fair distance. I also set up a monopod or tripod from back there. Circles on the right and left are going down the side of the theater towards the front. The circle in the middle, those are the ones I talked about. You need to be careful on those because when you go there, There are people behind you. When you go to those middle positions, you must get down on the floor, or you will block the people behind you. Do something like this for your theater. The end of part 1. Please continue to part 2.